All right, welcome to Paint Coach. I'm Chris Fornatero, here to help simplify oil painting so you can get better faster. Before I dive into this pet portrait, I just want to let you know, please, if you like this video, if you like other videos, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss when I release new videos. Also, I am going to be working on developing a Patreon, so you guys can have even more access to my videos. I can release the long form versions of these videos with my narration, videos that are 1, 2, 3 hours long. Also options where you can send me your work and I can make videos specifically just for you, critiquing your work, telling you what you're doing good, what you're not doing so good, things to work on. So actually individual coaching. So please subscribe to the channel so you do not miss when I announce that. All right, so I'm gonna do a pet portrait here. I've said I've made a previous pet portrait video before, and one of the most important things that I do talk about is getting a good photo. And I found a really good photo here. I forgot the name of the site that I got it from. It's a bunch of free, royalty-free photos, but this is a really good photo. I actually put a link in the description to the site where I got this photo, so you can find some other really great royalty-free reference photos. But this one's really good because you see it's got like a very strong light source. It's got very defined shadows, which is actually what I'm doing right now. I'm starting out with these shadows first. Keep it simple when you first start. Don't try and run into detail right away. I feel like that's a big mistake people make, and you're just kind of making it harder on yourself. Make it easier on yourself. Just don't worry about the details, just worry about the light and the dark. And you see that's what I'm doing right here. Everything's pretty much the same color tone. As you can see, I'm doing right here, everything's pretty much the same color tone. I got this burnt sienna mixed in with a little bit of ultramarine blue, but I got a dark, a base shadow color. It's not one exact color, it's kind of a local color, just to establish where the general shadow is. And yes, there are darker shadows within that shadow. There's lighter, there's highlights within the shadows. But I'm not even worried about that right now. I just want the main light and the main dark. And I'm not, extremely worried about nailing that color. It actually it shouldn't be an exact color, because you're gonna be adjusting it. You're going to be, adding darks in and lights in within that shadow color. And I also have put in the background here. This isn't, the final color that I'll use for the background, but it's a placeholder in a way, because having the background in it's just another tool to help you. One, it helps with, the drawing aspect. You can rearrange the contour of the drawing. Also, it's good just to have a reference point. If you're, in this picture, like the background is very dark. It's one of the darkest aspects of the photo. So it's a good reference point. So I can lay that in very dark and then use that as, kind of a gauge or a reference point for for the rest of the portrait. See, now I'm going in with the light side. I did the dark, and now I'm doing the light. And again, no specific, I'm not worried about a specific color, just kind of getting a general color, a local color for these highlights, just so I can break down the whole portrait in light and shadow. And I was also using a pretty large brush for that. I really recommend using a larger brush than you think you need at the beginning. It will force you to just see the big shapes and to not get into detail too quickly. So once I've gotten that, now I'm just you're just gonna be hopping around a lot. I don't really like to teach a specific method or like a formula, a step 1, 2, 3 for painting, because it really isn't like that. I mean, there are some general things that will help you. Like I did, I put the dark and the light on. I just broke it down really simply first with the general dark and the general light, but after that I'm going to be hopping around a lot, and it's just going to be I'm constantly comparing. I'm comparing my light to my dark. If I don't feel comfortable with working a certain area, I will leave that area and I'll come back to it later. I'll be more comfortable with that area later when I have the rest of the painting more developed around it, because it will inform me on what to do with that area that I was having trouble with or didn't know how to really do at the time. I was using a lot of flat brushes here. I actually just got a new set from Rosemary & Co. I'll put a link in the description to where I got those and the size brushes I use and everything. But I like using the flats because you can make a nice clean stroke with it. You can get a straight line, and especially for this beginning portion where you're just blocking everything in, you're really thinking kind of the planes of the figure, in this case the dog, and almost think of it as almost like wrapping the paint around the object of what you're painting in terms of your brush strokes. And I'm constantly pushing and pulling the colors, adding more red or more blue, or cooling things down, warming them up. Constantly comparing. I'll go in with the darks, then I'll push it back with some lights, and then go back in with the darks, and just go back and forth, back and forth. There really is no distinct reason for why I'm hopping around from one part to another. It's really just what my eye catches and what I feel in the moment I want to paint, because whatever I paint will inform the next part of the painting that I jump into. Like now I'm jumping out to the background. Just really want to get that in a little more darker, because it is similar to the darks with the darkest darks within the dog. So have to make sure that's being indicated accurately and relative to the background. And also just constantly be thinking about the shape. And, this is when you're painting anything. The shape of what you're painting. This head it's spherical. So looking for those spherical shadows. That's what those drawing exercises where you draw the sphere with the shadow and the light and the cast shadow and highlights and all that. That is designed to kind of train your eye to look for those patterns within a sphere when you are painting spherical subject matters, like a head, whether it's a person or a dog. But here I'm still just really trying to get my values down, mainly focusing on color, but the values is what's really going to do it, because that's how light or dark something is. And you can see right now on the bridge of the nose, it's not nearly light enough. Like I need to brighten that to really push that highlight. And I also need to darken the darkest darks within the dog, because those highlights aren't going to look as bright, and they're not going to pop as highlights if they're not surrounded by a lot of other a lot of darkness. It's only going to be as bright as how dark what around it is. And see, that's why having a really good photo, whenever I do portrait, pet portrait commissions, I do make sure to spend a lot of time in getting the best picture from the client as I can, because that really is half the battle, is getting a good photo. If you have one that there isn't a good distinction between the shadows and the highlights, it's just going to be very difficult to translate that onto a canvas with paint. I'm jumping into the nose here. So now I'm laying in these highlights, but I'm kind of doing it as just a placeholder. I want to see, a lot of times people will hold off on the highlights till the very end, but I like to lay in some fairly early on, again, just as information to kind of let me know where I am, if this is what the highlight is going to be, how's that looking compared to the shadows in this area, or the other midtones. So I'm just constantly moving my eye around the painting, stepping back, seeing what areas are not reading correctly in comparison to other areas. Is this this section to the right of the eye, is how much darker is that than right underneath that? And in my painting right now, it's not nearly dark enough, because it's very similar to the color below it in that shadow area. So I'll go in and push that. But it's really, it really is a building process. And, I know you see people online, these YouTube videos, people painting, and, they'll start with the eye and they'll do the eye to fully completion and move on to the nose and onto the mouth, and almost kind of like a machine just painting this, this painting. Some people can do that. I mean, I've never done it that way, and I find this way to be a lot more helpful and keep you from making mistakes, because you're seeing the painting as a whole and you're seeing how everything relates to one another. And it's hard to paint a certain area to completion when the areas around it aren't done, because it's really hard to gauge the correct color and value without any reference to the other colors and values within the painting. Now I'm going in, see I'm pushing those highlights on the bridge of the nose, and it's starting to come together here. The form of the I've got an airplane going over. I'm sorry about that. What are you gonna do? But yeah, just be constantly comparing. The great thing with oils is you can't really mess up. I mean, if you don't like an area, wipe it off and just keep painting, or build the paint over top of it. And I'm constantly repainting areas, making areas lighter that were darker, and so on. But another thing is be careful. I kind of got into this little trap later on the painting. Is I did get a little too caught up in all the shadows within the shadows and the highlights within the shadows, and I didn't step back enough, and I didn't see it as a whole, and I kind of made the shadows too dark and the highlights within the shadows too light, and so I kind of lost the general main shadow that is on the side of the dog's face, and it just didn't it just didn't read as being all on the same shadowed surface. So I had to go in there with a big brush and just kind of simplify it all. Sometimes when you don't know what's going on, or you kind of get lost in the painting, or you don't know, where you're going with it, or what is wrong, take a big brush and just simplify it. Don't worry about getting rid of those brush strokes. Don't worry about losing detail, but just take a step back and simplify the big shapes, and that'll kind of reset you and allow you to see what is most important, and so you don't lose the structure of the subject, because that's the thing you never want to lose. You don't want to lose the good structure of the subject, which is very easy to do because you get caught up in all these little details, and before you know it, the details are all right, but the general form is off, and it's not reading how you want it to read. Also, with taking, if you are going to do a portrait of your of a pet, I recommend when taking the photo, take it eye level. You see how the camera is eye level with the dog? A lot of times people always taking photos looking down at their dog because their dog is lower than them, and they just get their camera and look down at the dog, and the dog looks up and they think they got a good picture, but it just doesn't work that well. I mean, imagine if you did that with a person. If you were standing 4 feet above a person, they just looked up and you took a picture, you never would do a portrait that way. So don't do that with your pet. And also, if you can, this one is pretty posed. I just really like the lighting on it, but whenever you get one that doesn't look that posed is always great. And as far as backgrounds, I really like having a simple background. A lot of people will send me a picture of their pet, and they'll want it specifically in this background. The background doesn't really work for the painting, especially at the angle they have it, but it's, I'll try to convince them, I understand that you want it this, but it's really just not going to translate well into a painting. Just because something makes a good photo does not mean it's going to make a good painting. That goes for, everything, especially with portraits of people, because a lot of portrait photographers, their goal is to make the person look as good as possible, you know, make their skin look flawless, you know, get rid of any, you know, unflattering shadows and stuff. But with the painting, like, you want those shadows. You want to be able to have, you know, distinct shadows and definition within the face, so you know, can translate that into a painting with those dark and those lights. And a lot of photographers, you know, you even see it on social media, that's why people put all these filters in, because it softens the light, makes everything soft. There aren't, you know, any high contrasting shadows. And you probably know this if you try to paint a photo of somebody or yourself, and it just doesn't turn out well. It's, you know, a lot of times it's because you're not using a great photo. Like, I've had that happen to me a million times. It's like, oh, it's a clear photo, it's, you know, it's extremely focused, it's really well, you know, it's bright, you know, it's not dark or anything, it's not grainy. But then you do it and it's just so hard, because the shadow and highlights are so subtle, and the shift in values is so subtle that it's really, really hard to pull off. So if you're doing a pet portrait, doing any portrait, you know, set yourself up for success. You know, take a photo that's, you know, going to be easier to paint with distinct light and shadows. You know, I always, you know, recommend, you know, stand by a window. You know, if you're, you know, just taking a photo of your dog, cat, person, and, you know, just have it on one side of their face. 3/4 is always good. So I'm pushing into a little more detail here, using a smaller brush, and this is where I'm, you know, I'm trying to work all those shadows within the shadow and the highlights within the shadows. And you know, it like I said earlier, it can get really easy to push those too much. So always be constantly stepping back and comparing those. Also, a good thing is to put your photo, your reference photo, in black and white. I did that towards the end of the painting here, just on my phone, and put my phone up there too, along with the color one, just to make sure my values were correct and I wasn't making certain areas too dark or certain areas too light. So that's a good little tip to help with doing the values. And with pet portraits, you know, there are some people out there that do paint every single little hair, and that's a style, and if that's what you want to do, go for it. I've never really done that so much. I just try and indicate the fur, especially when it's really short fur like this. You know, I will go in the end with like a small brush and make some indications of fur and just to kind of the direction that it's going, but I never really get in there and do individual hairs. I will with the whiskers. I'll actually just take the back end of my brush and just kind of scrape the paint really quick to just do these quick little, you know, the whiskers. I find that helps. You can use a palette knife if you like to do those. But, you know, get in there with every hair. It can be very difficult, and that's kind of a whole technique in itself, which I do not know. So that's what you're looking for. This might not be the video for you. But I was fine just getting just really nailing the shapes and the values and the colors, and you can, you know, you can indicate the fur with your brush strokes. You know, you can, the direction of your brush strokes, I always try to go like in the direction that the fur would be going. In certain areas that are, you know, it's a little more clear, the fur is there, and, you know, it's, you know, I do go in with a small brush in certain areas, kind of like above the eyes, like a little eyebrows, and I'll put little, you know, little hairs up in there and stuff. But I'm not really going in on the whole thing and doing every individual little hair. Always be careful with your, anytime there's a highlight in a shadow area, like the edge of the ear here, it does look, you know, in the photo it is, you know, it is a highlight, but it's gonna look a lot brighter than it really is because it's so close to a shadow. Whenever you have these highlights in the shadow that are so close to you, really double check and make sure, because like I got mine right now way too light on the, you know, the edge of the ear here that flips up across from the eye. I made it too light because I look in the photo and it seems really light in the photo, but it's kind of an illusion of being surrounded by so many darks that it's actually more of like a mid-tone. It reads as really light when it's not, and you know, it's a good little, you know, trick to help with that is isolate an area. You can just take a piece of, you know, paper and cut a little hole and put it over the top of your reference photo, and you know, put it on one area and just see, you know, blocking out all the colors, so you just see that one color, and it will reveal, you know, what value it really is. And also, if you have it on the computer, you can also do that, like in Photoshop. You can select certain colors and put them side by side, and you can do that as well. All right, so now I got the my small round brush just going in. This is where I'm going in with like the little details, and you know, sharpening everything up a little bit. If I want to put some indications of hair, I'll put some little indications of hair here and there. I'm liking how everything is reading as a whole, all my shadows and, you know, highlights and their relationship to everything and the form that it's creating. So at this point, it's little detail areas, you know, like a lot of actually like adding little indications of hair, and you know, just adding the fun the icing on the cake, really, because you know, what's really going to make your portrait succeed or fail is those beginning stages, and really nailing the form of the dog and the shapes and the values and all that. So I hope you found this video helpful. If there's, you know, certain parts of this that you wish I would have explained more on, please let me know in the comment section. I will answer any questions that you have about this. You know, I'm sure there's a lot that I glossed over or should have gotten more detail with. So just let me know in the comment section. Again, please subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying this channel, enjoy the videos. I am working on developing a Patreon that will have even more in-depth videos about this, about, you know, everything from portraits, landscapes, all of that. You can have a section where, or, you know, a tier that will allow you to send me your work, and I will make a video specifically just for you, like a 10 or 15 minute video to critique your work, let you know what you're doing good, let you know what you need to work on, and actually give you that one-on-one coaching. So if that's something you would be interested in, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out when I release that. I'm Chris Fornatero here telling you to go get painting.